All right, please be seated. Investigator Edwards is on the stand, has been placed under oath. The court has an exclusionary order as it relates to viewing or watching any evidence or otherwise hearing anything about the trial. An issue was potentially raised on this matter. Ms. Blake, if you'd like to inquire, and the court will also conduct an inquiry if necessary about that issue with Investigator Edwards.
Investigator Edwards, did you happen to hear over the radio a portion of someone else's testimony?
Yes.
Was it information that you yourself had already personally reviewed in the case?
Yes.
And specifically, did it deal with the James and Elena story?
It did.
Had you read that yourself as part of the investigation?
Yes.
In any way, did the piece that you heard affect or influence your testimony?
No.
Did it have any impact on what you testified to today?
No.
Thank you. I don't have any additional inquiries on that.
All right. From the defense, any inquiry, Mr. Pryor?
As far as I'm concerned, there's no issue here. This was an inadvertent hearing of some information. I don't find any objection that I could even realistically make to suggest that there's been any influence whatsoever here.
Okay. Well, based on Ms. Blake's line of questioning and without any objection, the court likewise finds there's nothing that was any intentional or material violation of the exclusionary order that would affect the ability of the witness to testify. So thank you for your candor to the court, prosecution, as well as the witness. We'll go ahead and have the jurors brought back in, and you can commence with your direct. So if everybody please rise again for the jurors.
Your Honor, the jury is present.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right, the witness has been placed under oath. Ms. Blake, if you'd like to commence with direct, you may.
Thank you. Would you please state your name and spell it for the record?
My name is Nicholas Edwards, Nicholas, Edwards, Edwards.
Where are you currently employed?
So I'm employed with the Idaho Office of the Attorney General.
How long have you been employed with them?
I've been there 5 years.
What is your current title or position?
So my current position is the Idaho ICAC Task Force Commander. I'm the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force Commander.
Have you held additional positions since you've been with the Attorney General's office?
I have.
What are the other positions?
I was the lead over the Special Investigations Unit, as well as the investigator there at one point as well.
Prior to working with the Attorney General's office, did you have any other work in law enforcement?
I did. I was employed with the Pocatello Police Department on the east side of the state for about 15 years.
And what positions did you hold within the Pocatello Police Department?
Number of positions. I was in patrol. I also was a school resource officer at one point. I was also an active member of their special weapons and tactics team. I was a sniper team leader, honor guard, a couple of others, field training officer, a number of normal law enforcement positions in that city.
And in order to be a law enforcement officer, do you have any additional training?
I do. Yeah, I've got, I'm also an active member of the Idaho Army National Guard. I've had that's not necessarily for the, you're asking for law enforcement specifically?
With regard to law enforcement, do you have additional training or certificates?
Yeah, I hold a number of post certificates, basic, intermediate, advanced, mastery. Also an instructor in topics, law enforcement topics, to teach other police officers on a number of topics to include sniper observer tactics, SWAT tactics, and others.
And then you mentioned you also are a member of the National Guard.
I am. So I'm a member of the Idaho Army National Guard. The Idaho Army National Guard. I've been in the militaries for 24 years now and currently possess the rank of Command Sergeant Major at the Idaho Training Center here in Boise.
Do you have any degrees?
I do formal education. I have an associate's degree in law enforcement, a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and I have a master's degree in strategic leadership.
And you talked about some positions you held in Pocatello involving SWAT and sniper training. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I was part of the sniper observer team for a lot of years, trained with the team regularly, also instructed many other students on precision rifle courses.
And then in your work on the SWAT team and or the sniper program, did you familiarize yourself with various types of weapons?
I did.
And particularly, did you work closely with rifles?
I did.
Did that include assault rifles?
Yes.
Do you also have experience with them being in the National Guard?
I do.
Have you ever used paintball guns?
Yes, I have.
And in what capacity have you used paintball guns?
I've used them personally for recreation, but I've also trained with them. They're often a training tool for law enforcement and military personnel.
And you indicated that your previous position with the Attorney General's office was part of the special investigations.
I am. Yeah, it was.
Do you recall being contacted or your office being contacted by Fremont County?
Yes,
And would that have been approximately April of 2020?
correct.
Did you become involved in an investigation at Fremont County's request at that time?
I did.
What was that investigation?
So it was we got a request to assist in what was considered a joint investigation between a number of agencies into the death of 4 individuals, Tammy Daybell, JJ and Tylee, and then Charles Vallows.
Is it fair to say that a large focus of your investigation was into circumstances surrounding Tammy Daybell?
Yes,
Did you also assist in the investigations regarding the missing children?
yes,
At some point, did you assist in the investigation involving the homicide of the children?
yes,
Would it be fair to say that when you became involved, it was a joint investigation?
it was.
And do you recall some of the other agencies involved?
The Fremont County Sheriff's Office, Rexburg Police Department, FBI, Chandler Police Department, a number of others.
And through your investigation, did you conduct interviews?
I did.
Did you review various phone data?
Yes,
Did you review other documents?
yes,
Did you discuss the case with other investigators as you were going through?
yes,
And in preparation of your testimony today, did you create an exhibit?
I have.
Do you believe that this exhibit would assist you in testifying today?
It would.
Do you believe it would assist the jurors in understanding the evidence and testimony we'll be talking about?
It will.
Your Honor, I have what's been marked as State's Exhibit 398. I have a copy for counsel and I have a copy that has been initialed. And I do have a courtesy copy for Your Honor as well.
All right, and I believe I've already got my courtesy copy.
I
printed.
provided a printout, and so I have the actual jump drive.
Very well, thank you, ma'am.
And if the witness may be shown the one with the initials.
Yes.
Yep, that's me.
And Investigator Edwards, do you recognize that jump drive?
I do.
Are those in fact your initials on it?
They are.
And Your Honor, I would move for admission of State's Exhibit 398.
Any objection?
In its present form, Judge, no.
Very well, Exhibit 398 is admitted, incorporating the court's previous ruling on a motion in limine. Ms. Blake, you can continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. And the state would request permission to publish.
You may.
And Investigator Edwards, were you the lead investigator into the Tammy Daybell case for the Attorney General's office?
I was.
Can you tell us a little bit about what we are seeing on this slide?
So this is a timeline that I created when I came into this particular case. I came in late. We were April of 2020. And so in an effort to better understand the timeline and all of the information, I put it into a timeline chronologically to better understand what I needed to do. So this particular timeline starts in 2018 when Chad and Lori meet for the first time, and goes through June 9th, 2020, when Tylee and JJ are found on the Daybell property, with specific kind of highlighted areas throughout what I consider kind of major events, looking at the timeline.
And with that first event in October of 2018, why was that the starting point on this timeline for you?
I believe that's when this case really starts. I think that was the first recognizable event.
And that was when Chad and Lori met for the first time?
Correct.
And when we look at this slide, can you talk to us a little bit about these particular events?
So on October 26th, 2018, St. George, Utah, Chad and Lori meet for the first time. A few days later, on October 30th, 2018, we know that Chad does some Google searches and searches those particular things: Lori Vallow, Charles Vallow, and Lori Vallow photos. And at this time, Lori is actually living in Mesa, Arizona at the time. I think if you click one more, it'll show a yellow line. And so the slides that follow, and this one included, I have a yellow box or a yellow line that will kind of track along the timeline to show exactly where this went, where this took place.
And at the time Chad and Lori meet and these searches are conducted, do you know if Charles Vallow was still alive?
He was still alive.
And what about Tammy Daybell?
Yes, absolutely.
And then can you talk to us a little bit about these events?
Yeah, so if you can click one more, maybe. There it is. So during this time frame that's highlighted in yellow, on November 16th through the 17th, we know that Chad traveled to Mesa, Arizona for a Preparing the People conference, and he stayed with Lori in her residence. And this is just, almost less than a month from the time he'd first met her.
Judge, I'm going to object, non-responsive.
Sustained.
On that November conference, how long had it been since Chad and Lori had first met?
Less than a month.
And it was your understanding Chad ended up staying at Lori's residence?
Yes.
And then that next date there, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
January 6th through the 10th, know that Chad travels back to Arizona.
And was it your understanding Lori was in Arizona at that time?
It is.
And then that next date on there.
February 8th, 2019, we know that divorce proceedings were initiated by Charles Vallow with Lori.
At any point through the investigation, did you find any indication that Chad Daybell was planning on or looking into divorcing Tammy Daybell?
No.
And can you talk to us about this particular event?
So again, we're moving kind of down that timeline. March 19th to the 21st, 2019, Chad travels to Arizona with plane tickets that had been purchased by Lori.
And again, during this time, was Charles Vallow still alive?
He was.
And was Tammy Daybell still alive?
She was.
Can we talk about the first date here?
Can. April 2nd through the 4th, Lori travels to Idaho Falls. Shortly, you may click that a couple of times. There we go. May 5th through the 7th, both Chad and Lori separately are conducting internet searches for malachite rings.
Do you know what type of rings? Well, let me back up. Do you know if Chad and Lori were ultimately married?
I do. And they
were
were.
they?
Yes.
Do you know what type of rings they exchanged?
Malachite rings.
And then this last date here?
So on June 29th, Charles actually sent Tammy an email regarding her ongoing relationship with their spouses and actually requested contact from Charles. And the email, in quotes there, says, Tammy, my name is Charles Vallows. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband. Yes, ma'am. I apologize. Where do you want me to start? Tammy? All right. Tammy, my name is Charles Vallow. I have some vital and disturbing information regarding your husband and my wife, Lori. I apologize to be the one sending this, but something has to be done. I feel it's best if I shed some light on the issue. Charles also sent Chad an email and confronted him regarding the relationship as well.
In relation to this email, through the investigation, were you able to determine if Tammy ever saw the email?
I was not.
And do you know when Charles Vallow was killed?
So he was killed less than 2 weeks after this email on July 11th, 2019.
And on this particular slide, can we talk about the first date?
Yep. On July 2nd, prior to Charles Vallow's death, Charles told Lori he was going to go to Idaho Falls to meet with Tammy. And Lori's text to Charles stated, quote, she won't see you. She is my friend. She won't listen to you. Go ahead. You are ridiculous.
Through the investigation, was there any indication that Charles Vallow actually traveled to Idaho?
No.
And then what happened 9 days later?
Charles Vallows was shot and killed by Lori's brother, Alex, in Arizona.
And can you, starting first with the July 13th, 2019, can you indicate who the message is being sent from and to, and read that message into the record?
I can. So this slide in blue is Chad and in pink is Lori. So the first one is July 13th, 2019. Chad sends a text message to Lori and says, I'm heading to bed so that I can come snuggle tightly against you. I adore you. You are truly my best friend on earth and throughout eternity. See you in a minute.
And again, this is just 2 days after Charles Vallow is shot and killed.
Correct.
And then if you move to July 14th, if you would also read those messages into the record.
Okay, I'll start on the left, July 14th, 2019. Chad states, I need so badly to just gently kiss you for hours. And then the time is 8:33 p.m. Chad again, it would likely lead to other activities. Time is 8:34. Lori replies, likely or lucky at 8:34. Chad replies, it would luckily lead to nakedness at 8:35. Shift to the other side.
Yes, please.
Okay. July 14th, 2019. I know that Chad has written a romantic sexual story called James and Elena and sent it to Lori. Chad sends a text. I love you, Elena, with heart emojis. We have an amazing love story, sent at 9:54. Chad again, heading to bed and then heading to Lily. Can't wait to talk in the morning. You are fabulous. Heart emoji, fire, kiss at 9:57. Chad again, definitely loving you throughout the night. Fire emoji at 2:32.
And there's a reference there to James and Elena. Through the investigation, were you able to determine who James was in reference to?
I was. It was Chad.
And who was Elena in reference to?
Lori.
There's also a name in there, Lily. Did you learn who Lily referenced?
Also Lori.
And then if we move to the messages on July 15th, if you could read those into the record.
July 15th, 2019, Lori sends a text message at 11:43. Taking off to Vegas, last ones on the plane, just making it. Wishing you were on the other side of this flight. Love you so much. And then 2 heart emojis. Chad replies, love you more. Keep me posted, my beloved angel, with a heart emoji.
And then looking at the next slide, can you tell us what we're seeing here?
Yeah, so as we move, again, kind of moving down this timeline, at July 18th, 2019, a text message from Lori to Chad, where she states, quote, so I talked to the insurance company. He changed it in March. So it was probably Ned before we got rid of him. They can't tell me to who, of course, but it's done. I'll still get $4,000 a month from SS, believe to be Social Security, end of quote.
And were you able to determine who Ned was in reference to through the investigation?
Yeah, that next paragraph there, Ned is a name that Chad and Lori assigned using it in reference to Charles Vallows. Charles had a $1 million life insurance policy with Lori as the beneficiary, but changed the beneficiary to his sister, Kay Woodcock, approximately 4 months prior to his death.
And when you're reading that message, did it catch your attention?
It did.
And what about it caught your attention?
Clearly, this was something that was of importance to both of them, both Chad and Lori.
And then looking at the next slide here, are these additional messages that were recovered that were between Chad and Lori?
They are.
And starting with the July 18th, could you read those messages into the record?
I can. July 18th, 2019, Lori sends a text message. This is sweet. I miss you desperately. Heart emoji at 8:34. Chad replies, you are so adorable, beautiful, wonderful, heavenly, luscious, and angelic. So many divine attributes rolled into one dynamic, desirable package. I want you even more desperately than you want me. 2 kiss emojis.
And then the next one's on July 22nd. Can you also read those in?
I can. Chad sends a text message at 2:45 p.m. Love you. Going with Garth in an hour to see the other side of heaven too. Missing you desperately, but so excited to be with you. Heart emoji, heart emoji. Lori replies, you will love it, with a heart emoji. Chad replies, not as much as I love you, with a heart emoji. Lori replies, I love you. You will enjoy the scenery. Looks a lot like Kauai, a lot. Looks like Kauai a lot, with 2 beach emojis, I imagine those are. Chad replies with a smiley face. Lori replies, hopefully we will be there someday soon together. Chad replies, that is the plan, with a fire emoji. Lori states, and my greatest desire.
Was there something about these particular messages that caught your attention?
That's second to last one where Chad states, that is the plan.
We talked before that Chad and Lori were married. Do you know where they ended up getting married?
In Hawaii.
And do you know when they were married if Tylee and JJ were present?
They were not.
And then looking at this next slide, can you talk to us about that July 26th message?
Can. So this is a text message that Chad sent to Lori. That's a screenshot of what was extracted. It says from Bubby, to be Chad. Tonight I figured out who I feel like. I'm a grown-up version of Harry Potter who has to live with the Dudleys in his little space under the stairs. Every few weeks I get to escape and have amazing adventures with my goddess lover. But then I have to return to my place under the stairs feeling trapped. But I sense permanent freedom is coming, with 2 heart emojis, or rather 2 fire emojis.
And when this message is sent, again, was Tammy still alive?
She was.
And then was there anything else in relation to that message that stood out to you?
And the top one,
Yes.
the permanent freedom is coming is, again, like the previous one already talked about, the plan, permanent freedom stood out to me for sure.
And at that point, was Charles Vallow still alive?
Oh,
And then if we can move down to that July 30th, can you read that text?
I can. July 30th, 2019, Chad again sends Lori a text message. It says, yes, quote, yes, we might need to release a little steam when we talk. Anyway, this is the chart that checks what percentages mortals are still in their body. It works. It worked for my friend's wife who died, my neighbor, George Bush, Stanley Lee, etc. I kind of forgot about it because we've been dealing with zombies and demonic entities. But this afternoon, Tammy said she felt lightheaded, as if her body and spirit weren't connected. Goes on to say, quote, I got the inspiration to go back to my original death percentages that helped us track Charles, Ned, etc. Tammy is very close. Her percentage has fallen steadily since Hiplos left. It's encouraging.
Through the investigation, did you determine who Hiplos or Iplos would have been referencing?
I don't remember that.
And in this, did you notice whose death percentages are being referenced?
Yes, Tammy's.
And can you talk to us a little bit about what we're seeing on this next slide?
So August of 2019, we know that Chad again traveled to Arizona where he stayed with Lori. And on August 14th, 2019, Lori actually takes a screenshot of 2 wedding bands that she purchased from Serenity Rings. Same type.
And again, at this time, Tammy Daybell is still alive.
She is.
And on this next slide, can you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here?
So this is also text message content on the far right between Lori, Zulema, Chad. On September 15th, 2019, Zulema travels to Rexburg under the Lori and Chad's direction. Zulema then assisted Chad in getting out of the house so that Lori and Chad could meet. And that's evident in the text message. The top one is a text message that's actually from Chad that is sent to Zulema from Lori, if that makes sense. But from Chad, he says to Lori, please have Zulema send a message to me that she's in Rigby and wanted to see if I could come listen to her talk tonight about her trip to Chile. Lori then sends a message again to Zulema. He wants you to send a text so he can come talk to us tonight. Zulema then sends a text message complying with Chad's request to Chad. Hello, Chad. I'm in Rigby. I want to see if you would come listen to me talk about my trip to Chile. Chad replies to Zulema, tonight, ? Zulema replies to Chad, yes, tonight. Chad to Zulema, I can be there at 7:30. Thanks. And then Zulema to Chad, awesome, see you then.
And then there's another note there regarding September 16th. What did you learn regarding September 16th?
That on September 16th, 2019, Chad, Lori, Alex, and Zulema travel to Mesa Falls and Island Park together.
And then looking at this next slide, can you talk to us a little bit about these messages?
So on October 3rd, 2019, there's a text message from Chad to Lori at 21:31 hours, which is 9:30 p.m. Good night, Angel Lily. So excited to go on our date. Fire emoji. October 4th, 2019, text from Chad to Lori at 0420, which is 4 o'clock in the morning. Dreaming of caressing you in bed. I adore you and Osholo you. Heart emoji and a fire emoji.
And were these copied over as found?
They were.
Do you believe that that message contained a typo?
I do.
And which word do you believe is not accurate?
Judge, I'm going to object. Calls for speculation.
Sustain.
Through the investigation, did you ever learn of any kind of a meaning of Usholo?
No.
And then on that final note there, can you tell us what that's about?
October 4th through the 5th, Chad urges Tammy to go visit her family in Springfield, Utah.
Through the investigation, did you learn if Tammy actually made that trip?
She did.
And can you now talk to us about the text that we're seeing on this slide?
So during these texts, we do know that Tammy has made it down to Utah during this time, during these text messages. So the first one, text from Chad to Lori at 8:45 in the morning. Thank you for sending me that paragraph, beautiful Lily. I'm eager to see you soon. Trying to hasten her departure. I love you endlessly, with a kiss, heart, and fire emoji. Same day, Chad to Lori at 10:24 in the morning. Again, Tammy is still in Utah. It is dragging on here, but I should be to your house around 11:15. I want to talk to you first, of course. So maybe tell her I can talk from 2:15 to 1. And then a follow-up text from Lori to Alex, her brother, at 4:29 in the afternoon. Again, Tammy's still in Utah. Quote, we are supposed to go on a real date tonight, but we are discussing it. Perhaps an evening at home would be better, so we are not out and about. I'll let you know. But you could come and sing with us after your shower. Heart emoji. The last one, October 5th, 2019. Again, Tammy is still in Utah. There are 3 deleted messages on the Lori Vallow iCloud account from Chad. And those are going to be shown on the next slide.
And in relation to when Tammy was in Utah, do you know where Lori was living at that time?
At that time, she had actually moved up to Rexburg.
And do you know where Chad was during that time period?
Rexburg.
And if we move to this next slide, can you read these messages as well?
Can. These text messages were sent to Lori Vallow from Chad Daybell just days before the attempted shooting that we get into in the next slide, I believe. First one, hello, sweet
Judge,
angel.
could I have some foundation as to the date these text messages supposedly took place?
I think the witness just indicated that, Your Honor.
It's overruled.
The also, if we move that message just barely up, the date is time stamped on them. You'd have to go.
That skipped.
You'd probably have to exit this particular.
Can you see the?
I can see the text. Yeah, they're going to be right around the same date at the bottom. So the first one.
Judge, I'm going to object at this point. There's no indication of who sent these messages to who. In fact, the notation says unknown.
And
Response.
Your Honor, I think if you look over to the right-hand screen, there's an indication on the slide of who the text messages went to and from.
Okay.
And Judge, could I voir dire in aid of objection?
Well, in lieu of that, the exhibit's been admitted. I think that's appropriate for cross. There is an indication, so I'll overrule the objection at this time. Ms. Blake, this is a lengthy enough exhibit. I think we are going to need to break for lunch before we get through it, and we're right at noon. Is there a time you think that's more appropriate to stop than now?
I had intended to just get through this slide and then stop, but if the court would prefer we stop now, we can absolutely do that.
Let's go ahead and go through the slide. That's fine. Thank you.
If you can read these into the record.
I can. First text message. Hello, sweet angel. Big news about Tammy. Please let me know if you are awake and can talk. I love you. And then 2 emojis. Shortly after, the short version is that she has been switched. Tammy is in limbo, and a level 3 demonic entity named Viola is in her body. It happened about 10 p.m. and was done by Tammy's sister, Sam, who I always knew was 3D, but it turns out she's multiple creation. Next, quote, Viola has been attached for about a year to my niece, Danica, who is Sam's 12-year-old daughter. I have connected with Tammy in limbo, and she is very frustrated and upset. She wants Viola removed as soon as possible. Viola seemed to be similar to Penelope. The personality differences from Tammy should be evident quickly. Please seek a confirmation on this, but I have checked 3 times since I got home and get more affirmative answers each time. Next quote. Sam is much like Brandon. She has been my biggest enemy over the years. She refuses to read my books and threw the biggest fit when we moved to Idaho. She has only visited us when the kids got married and always fled Idaho within hours, like she was being burned. She's definitely comparable to Brandon and Summer. The last text, not fully sure of the timing for removal, but once her actions verify the differences, I don't want to wait.
And Your Honor, if we would like to break for lunch now.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that. We'll take our lunch recess at this time.
Thank you for that assistance. Investigator Edwards, do you recall leaving off with this slide?
I do.
And again, these were messages sent in the days before the attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell?
Correct.
And can you tell us what we're seeing on this slide?
So the timeline again moves right up for October 9th. On October 7th, 2019, you know that Alex signs into the St. Anthony gun range. On October 8th, 2019, he actually conducts a internet search of 6.5 Grindle drop from 100 to 200 yards. And then he visits a site drop from 100 to 300 yards.
And in looking at those searches, are you aware of some of the firearms located in an apartment associated with Alex Cox?
I am.
And was one of those firearms, in fact, a 6.5 Grendel?
It was.
Can you explain a little bit about what the drop means?
I can, yeah. So the image on the right is kind of I'll give you a visual idea of what we're talking about, but drop is actually what that bullet does is it comes out of the weapon, and what the searcher is looking for right here is what that distance is and what effect that will have on the bullet. So the farther out the shot, that bullet naturally just drops, right? And you can compensate for that with your scope. You can make an adjustment on your scope so that you can shoot and hit targets that are further out past 100, 200, 300,000 yards, whatever it is.
And then it looks like there is also a visit to the gun range on October 8th.
There on October 8th, he again signs into the St. Anthony gun range, and then he conducts a Google search for a Rhode Island area code, which is 401.
And did you learn a significance with that 401?
I did.
What was that?
So we can go to the next slide. There's a 401 number that is used by Chad Daybell. To date, this phone has not been located, but two burner phones are used for the first time on October 9th at about 9:15. A burner phone is an investigative or an inexpensive cell phone rather, designed for temporary or sometimes anonymous use, and then it can be discarded.
And I think you indicated there were two burner phones.
There were
Do you know who those phones were associated with?
Alex and Chad.
And then there's an indication here as well of some real phone numbers. Can you explain what those are?
Yep. The 208-690-9374 number was Chad's real phone. And then the last number on there, the 480-351. Yeah, sorry. I did this last time. I apologize. 480-351-9120 was Alex's real phone number.
And again, what event occurred on October 9th?
So there was an attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell on October 9th.
And then looking down below at those next boxes, can you explain what we're seeing there?
So I took and piled so I could better understand all of the messages and cell phones that were involved in this. The first block at the top, I calculated 90 calls and text messages between Alex, Chad, Zulema, and Lori between 9 o'clock in the morning on the 9th and 2:28 in the following morning on the 10th. So there were 8 text messages between Alex and Chad between 1:19 p.m. and 1:22 p.m. Alex Cox and Chad Daybell's phones are actually near each other between 1:22 and 2:20 p.m. on the 9th. And then there are 15 text messages between Alex and Chad between 7:13 p.m. on the night of the 9th and 8:43 p.m. on the night of the 9th. The attempted shooting occurs somewhere between 9:15 and 9:25. And then there's 4 additional text messages between Alex and Chad between 10:28 p.m. and 10:29 p.m.
And through your investigation, did you determine where Zulema and Lori were on October 9th?
I did.
Where were they?
They were in Arizona.
Did you learn of anything that they were doing on October 9th?
I did.
What was that?
I learned that they were doing a casting about the same time.
Do you know where Chad and Alex were located?
I do.
Where was that?
In Rexburg, Fremont County.
And when we see these messages being exchanged between Alex and Chad, was that a combination of all 4 phone numbers listed here?
It was.
And can you tell us what we're seeing on this slide?
So this slide and the next 3 are all kind of describing where specifically that phone was located. So the first phone that we talked about, Chad's burner phone, what I call the 401 number, there are text messages between Alex and Chad between 1:19 and 1:22. And those phones, Chad and Alex's electronic devices, are at Alex's apartment, at or near Alex's apartment between 1:22 and 2:20 p.m.
And when you were going through this, did you use location data collected by other officers or agents?
I did.
You did not plot the data points yourself?
Correct.
And what are we seeing on this slide?
This is what I call Chad's real phone, the 208 number. There are 8 text messages between Alex and Chad between 1:19 and 1:22 on the same day. Again, Chad and Alex's electronic devices are near Alex's apartment between 1 and 2:20.
And on this one?
So this is the Homer J. Maximus Gmail account for Alex, which is attached to Alex's real phone of 480-351-9120. And again, Chad and Alex's electronic devices are at or near Alex's apartment between 1:22 and 2:20 p.m.
And with this slide?
So this is where it changes. We know that Alex's real phone then travels south to Idaho Falls. And so between 2:40 and 3:18 p.m., Alex's electronic device travels to Idaho Falls Sportsman's Warehouse.
And on this slide?
On October 9th at 4:11 p.m., there's a transaction that consists of 5 items that are listed below that Alex purchases. A woodland cap, foot mitts, some gloves, thermal 3-hole FAs, and a picture on the next slide, a bullfrog rain jacket, and then a Dr. Pepper.
And you said rain jacket. Did you mean pants?
Pants, I'm sorry. Yes, rain pants.
And these are images of those items?
Correct.
And do you know if these were actually photos taken or obtained by Agent Wright?
Yes.
And what are we seeing on this slide?
So this is now that same day, Alex's electronic device has since gone back up north towards Fremont County and actually drives past the Daybell residence. The device moves to the area of Daybell. You can see that it comes up, the little green CD little image is the Daybell property or residence, and the arrows indicate the travel that Alex's device went.
Through the investigation, did you learn of anyone besides Chad that Alex knew in that vicinity?
No.
And what are we seeing on this slide?
This is a few minutes after he goes past the residence. He basically turns around and comes back past the Daybell property.
As part of your investigation, did you review the events of October 9th of 2019?
I have.
And to be clear, you were not involved in that initial investigation?
That is true.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what's indicated on this slide and what we're seeing?
So this is the 2 photographs. The one on the left is an overview of the Daybell property. You can see that there's a driveway that comes in off of 200 North, and then another driveway that comes in off of 1900 North. And the image on the right is a photograph of the front of the Daybell residence showing that driveway on 1900 North. On October 9th at approximately 9:15, the first 911 call to Fremont County Sheriff's Office is made by Joseph Murray, who is Tammy's son-in-law.
And I think you said at 9:15, is that the time?
Sorry, I read 9:41, sorry.
Not a problem. And with 9:15, are you aware that that's when Tammy indicated the event had occurred?
Correct.
So from your understanding, the event was not called in immediately?
Correct, it was not.
And I believe there should be a pointer somewhere up there. Do you see that?
I do.
And can you point out again on the overview image where the 2 driveways are?
So driveway number 1 here, and then the second driveway right here, which is the same driveway right here.
And can you, as part of the investigation, did you review some of the contents of of a device associated with Tammy
I did,
and some accounts associated with her?
yes.
Do you recall looking at this particular message?
I do.
And can you read it into the record?
Again, on October 13th, 2019, Tammy sent her son, Mark, an email, who was serving an LDS mission at the time. And it says, quote, "I was coming home from clogging. It was about 9:15, and I backed into the front driveway. I was getting some items out of the back seat. We had made freezer meals for enrichment that night and my clogging shoes. I realized someone was by the back of the car. I looked up, thinking it was Dad or Garth to help me carry stuff in. Nope. It was a guy dressed in all black with a ski mask on, pointing a rifle at me. I think I was a bit in shock because I just said, 'What do you think you're doing?' Then I noticed the rifle was actually a paintball gun. It had a hopper on top. The guy started pulling the trigger, and I could just hear the clicking and a whooshing sound of an empty paintball gun. He stayed standing by the back of the car, just pulling the trigger while pointing the gun at me. For some reason, I kept asking him what he thought he was doing. At that point, I was actually more annoyed than scared because he was standing between me and the door, and he didn't step toward me or even say anything. The scared part came after, when my brain thought of the other things that could have happened. The thought crossed my mind to hit him with my clogging shoes. But first, I looked toward the house and yelled, "Chad." Then they guy ran off around the north side of the house. I ran in the house and got Dad and Garth.
In this email, do you see the different references made to the weapon?
I do.
And how does Tammy initially identify the weapon?
As a rifle.
And do you also see where she talks about it actually being a paintball gun?
I do.
And then do you see in parentheses where she added some clarification?
Yes.
And what, if anything, would that indicate to you?
Response was played.
Your Honor, I think in his investigative capacity, I'm asking if that indicated anything to him as an investigator.
Judge, it doesn't allow him to speculate about what was the purpose of this comment in an email. That's speculative.
I'll sustain that.
Tammy provided clarification with relation to that paintball gun. Is that correct?
She did.
Are you aware of anything that can resemble a hopper on a rifle?
Yes.
What would that be?
A scope.
Do you also see an indication that the individual is doing more than simply pointing the firearm?
Yes.
And what did you see in addition to that?
He keeps pulling the trigger, pointing the gun at her.
And do you recall what color the items were that were purchased from Sportsman's Warehouse earlier in the day?
Black.
And I'd previously asked you what on a rifle could resemble a hopper. Can you tell us what we're seeing in that first image, the top one?
So the top image is the 6.5 millimeter Grendel AR that was recovered. It belonged to Alex Cox.
And can you tell us what that bottom image is?
The bottom image is an example of a Tippmann paintball gun that was pulled.
And with that pointer, can you show us where the hopper is on the paintball gun?
On this particular paintball gun, this is the hopper right here.
And in relation to that firearm, can you tell us where the scope is?
This is the scope right here.
And again, we talked previously about your experience with using both assault rifles and paintball guns. Do these appear to be accurate representations of some that you've seen before?
They do.
And in Tammy's description, the gun is being pointed at her.
Yes.
Would that indicate she's looking at the front of the gun?
That's how I would interpret it. Yes.
Did you notice anything else in relation to that Grendel 6.5 in relation to the end of that firearm, like the front of it?
Yeah. So I noticed that the front of this has been grooved out or has the capacity of having something attached to the front of it.
And in your experience, what types of things can be attached to the front of an assault rifle?
A suppressor.
If a firearm has a suppressor attached and it's fired, would it still potentially make a sound?
Yes.
What type of a sound might it make?
Whooshing sound.
Did you notice anything? Let me back up. Did you personally observe this 6.5 Grendel?
I did.
Did you make any additional observations in relation to this firearm?
I did.
And what were those?
It's kind of difficult to see on this picture, but you'll notice there's a gap right here. Sorry, my hand's shaking a little bit, but there's a gap between the upper and the lower receiver. of the weapon.
And can you talk about what we're seeing here?
This is the gap I was talking about between what is the lower receiver and the upper receiver of the weapon.
And can you tell us a little bit about why that stood out to you?
So this particular weapon, when I observed it, if you tipped or even slightly moved that weapon, there's two pins on these weapons. There's a front takedown pin and a rear takedown pin. Typically, those sit tight within the weapon and they keep the weapon together. It comes apart in two pieces. They have an upper receiver and a lower receiver. And when you take one of that rear takedown pin out, this one here, that weapon actually hinges and comes up. If that makes sense. If you take both of them out, the weapon comes apart in two pieces. So for me, when I saw this weapon and I held it, literally just turning it a little bit caused that rear takedown pin to come out. Didn't take me hardly anything to do that. Most weapons, those sit very secure and tight.
And if something caused that pin to come loose, would the gun still fire?
Judge, objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
It
Would
could.
a gun... And you say it could. Would it fire multiple times from your training and based on your training and experience?
So the minute that gap is formed between the upper and the lower receiver, what happens in this weapon is this bolt right here, when the weapon is fired, retracts into the buttstock of the weapon, into the stock. So when that gap is created, this bolt right here cannot retract into the buttstock of the weapon. The gun would malfunction quick. You may get one round off, but you won't get more if that weapon stays separated.
And would that be regardless of if someone kept pulling the trigger?
Yes.
And again, this is an image of the firearm recovered that was associated with Alex Cox.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about what we're seeing on this slide?
So this slide is the timeline of October 9th, the night of the attempted shooting. Starting at 5:28 p.m., there are 6 text messages between Chad and Lori. 7:13 to 8:43, there are 15 text messages between Alex and Chad. Between 9:04 and 9:28, there are 6 text messages between Lori and Zulema. And between 9:15 and 9:25, the attempted shooting occurs. Shortly after the attempted shooting, Chad and Lori are texting at 9:30. We know that Emma, Joseph's wife, calls Tammy at 9:37. 9:41 is that 911 call that Joseph Murray makes. At 9:45, the first Fremont County Sheriff deputy arrives or is dispatched. Tammy then calls Fremont County Sheriff's Office at 9:49, and the first Fremont County Sheriff deputy arrives on scene at 9:52. While the Fremont County Sheriff deputy is on scene, there are 2 text messages between Alex and Lori. There are 4 text messages between Chad and Alex, and there are 2 text messages between Chad and Lori at 10:31. And then the Fremont County Sheriff deputy clears the scene at 10:42. We know that Alex calls Zulema and has a 38-minute plus phone conversation with her at 11:28. And then there are 3 text messages between Zulema and Alex between 12 and 12:28 the following day at that point.
And from your review of the phone records, did you ever observe the content of those text messages?
No.
And then can you tell us about this slide?
So on October 9th, there is an internet search that Alex conducts on how to clean an AR. On October 11th, he then makes a few more internet searches, which include how to drill baffles to make a suppressor? Will a 6.5 Grendel shoot through a windshield? 2008 Dodge Dakota steel body thickness. What gauge steel are the doors of a Dodge Dakota made of? How thick is 22 gauge steel? He then visits the sites, making a homemade silencer, build your own silencer, and what caliber would penetrate a windshield.
And the bulk of the searches contained on this slide were 2 days after the attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell.
Correct.
And again, on October 9th, was Tammy Daybell actually shot?
No.
Was there any significance in relation to that Dodge Dakota?
There was.
What was that?
The Daybells owned a Dodge Dakota.
And can you tell us what we're seeing on this slide?
Yeah, you may click through those. Okay. Just continuing with the timeline. October 12th, we know that Alex goes to the shooting range again on the 13th of October, again on the 15th of October. But on the 16th of October, he actually goes to the storage unit and puts the 2 rifle scabbards, 2 totes, and 2 boxes into his storage unit. Yep. 2 rifle scabbards, 2 totes, and 2 boxes into the storage unit. And then he does not go back to the shooting range again after storing the weapons.
As part of the investigation, did you also focus in on October 18th?
I did,
And why was that?
because on October 19th, Tammy Daybell was killed.
Objection, Judge.
Sustain.
Argumentative.
Sustain.
Judge, I'd like,
I will strike that response.
Do you know if Tammy Daybell was pronounced dead on October 19th?
She was.
And what are we seeing on this slide?
On October 18th, this is Chad's 401 number that is utilizing the towers that are provide coverage to his residents. At 9:54 a.m. when it receives a text message from Alex's 334 number, and Chad returns that text message at 10:40 a.m.
And what are we seeing on this slide?
So this is a October 18th. This was a screenshot of Tammy's phone that was active and playing games until 10:22 p.m. or an image.
And can you tell us what we're seeing on this slide?
So again, this is a cast report that I reviewed on October 18th from 10 to 11:46 p.m. We know that Alex Cox's phone is near the Daybell residence from 10:07 to 10:45 p.m. at the LDS church, which is just south of the Daybell property, about 2.6 miles away. Alex's phone does not provide any data from 10:45 until 11:53 when it's actually driving away from the LDS church on Highway 20. We know that Alex's phone then goes to Idaho Falls and where it stays at a hotel.
Do you know at that time if Alex still had a residence in Rexburg, Idaho?
I don't remember if he did or not at that point.
And again, through the investigation, did you learn of anyone besides Chad Daybell that Alex knew in that vicinity?
No.
And can you tell us what we're seeing on this slide?
So this timeline is similar to the one from the 9th, but this covers the 18th to the 19th of October between 6:13 and 12:35 a.m. Between 6:13 to 8:24 p.m., there are 6 text messages between Chad and Lori. Between 6:56 and 8:24, 6 text messages between Lori and Alex. At 8:44, Chad texts Alex. At 8:47 to 9:04, there are 12 text messages between Alex and Lori. 8:52 p.m., Lori texts Chad. 9:35, Alex texts Chad. 9:43, Chad texts Lori. 9:59 to 11:12, there are 11 text messages between Zulema and Lori. At 10:07, Alex's phone arrives at the LDS church that we just talked about. Between 10:12 and 10:28, there are 4 text messages between Alex and Chad. 10:22, Tammy's phone is active playing games. 10:23 to 10:54, there are 10 text messages between Alex and Chad. And at 11:28, there's a single image that is deleted from Tammy's phone. Chad then sends 2 text messages to Lori between 11:34 and 11:35. At 11:46, like we just talked about on the last slide, Alex's phone leaves the LDS church parking lot and heads south. At 11:53 to 12:09, Alex calls Lori. At 12:10, Lori sends Zulema a text, and at 12:35, Chad sends Lori a text.
And during this time frame through the investigation, did you learn Lori was in Hawaii?
Yes,
And is it your understanding Zulema was in Arizona?
it is.
Where did you understand Chad and Alex to be?
Both in Fremont County.
Can you tell us what we're seeing? Actually, I'll back up here. Are you aware of where Tammy was ultimately buried?
I am
And where was that?
in Utah.
Do you know when her funeral was held?
I do.
When was that?
So her funeral was held on October 22nd in Springville, Utah.
So 3 days after she was pronounced dead?
Correct.
And can you walk us through the messages that appear on this slide?
Okay. October 20th, 2019, between 7:48 and 8:33 a.m. Again, Lori is in Hawaii. Lori sends a text, and again, this is in pink and blue. I'm missing you more. I need you desperately. Heart emoji. I can't wait. Kiss emoji, kiss emoji. Need you to hold me tight. That would be great. What about the idea of you coming here Thursday or Friday? Or do you want me to come home? ? Chad replies, their apartment is haunted and we can't clear the place. So they are looking to move anyway, and I have the perfect place for them. I need to be here to get sorting the financial stuff, and I truly need your help. So please come home Thursday so we can spend the night together. Then as soon as I have things under control, we can return. I seriously want you to look for a condo for us while you are there that we could return to at the first of the month. Lori replies, I know exactly where we should be. I don't really care where we are as long as you are holding me forever. Heart emoji. Chad, I want to get going full steam ahead on Lily workout plan. Tighten the abs, get a full body tan, grow out my hair. This could be really good for both of us. She replies, I love that plan. It's not soon enough though. This is torture. Maybe you need to clear my mind so I can't remember how much I love you. Heart emoji. I will try, but it feels like Raphael and Lily are together about 100%. Not sure it will ever be lower again. That's true. I do feel you. Heart emoji. I feel lovesick. I can't sleep. I don't want to eat. I just want you. It's so consuming. And then 2 emojis, and I'm not sure what those are. I know exactly how you feel. I'm feeling sad, but it isn't for the reason everyone thinks.
And when we look at these messages again, did you know where Lori was located around this time?
She was in Hawaii.
And Chad's indicating to her that she should look for a condo there?
Yes.
And this is the day after Tammy's been pronounced dead?
Correct.
Was there anything else in particular that stood out to you about this message, about this series of messages?
The last text message from Chad. I know exactly how you feel. I'm feeling sad, but it isn't for the reason everyone thinks.
And then if we can go through the messages on this slide as well.
So this is October 20th between 7:48 and 8:33 a.m. Again, Lori's still in Hawaii. What is on your agenda today? Chad replies, need to get ready to meet with the mortuary, but I hope to be able to talk in a few hours after I get my parents to go home. I love you so much, my sweet Lily. What time does Audrey arrive? Lori replies, she gets here at 2 my time, so 6 your time. We are going to Sacrament at 9 to see Lisa, hopefully. Kiss emoji. I love you, heart emoji. 3 days later, another text message at 8:24 a.m. Again, Lori is still in Hawaii. I love you, Lily. Eagerly anticipating our alone time. Craving you intensely. 3 fire emojis.
At this point in time, were JJ and Tylee missing?
Yes,
Was Tammy deceased?
she was.
Was Charles also deceased?
He was.
Through your investigation, did you learn when Chad and Lori were married?
I did.
And when was that?
November 5th, 2019
And do you know where they got married?
in Hawaii.
And again, do you know what kind of rings they exchanged?
Malachite rings that they had purchased.
And can you talk through what we're seeing on this slide?
So this is a slide on the insurance policies. Chad and Tammy both had life insurance policies for $300,000. They were established on 3/19 of 02, the policy number up there. On September 8th, Tammy's life insurance through Ballard Insurance from the school that she worked at was $50,000. She raised her individual amount of $10,000 to the max of $80,000 for a total of $130,000. On October 21st, 2019, Chad submitted a claim for Tamara Michelle Douglas Daybell as deceased as of on October 19th, 2019. The place of the death was at Rexford, Idaho at the home, and the cause of death was died in sleep. On October 31st, Chad received a deposit of $300,000 in life insurance. On October 8th, he received an additional $130,000 life insurance proceeds.
And I think on that last one, you said October. Did you mean November?
I did. I apologize.
Through the investigation, did you become aware that Chad had given Alex Cox a patriarchal blessing?
Yes,
Did you view that or listen to it at some point?
I did.
Is this in fact a portion of that patriarchal blessing?
It is.
And can you indicate when the blessing was given to Alex?
November 24th, 2019.
And can you read that excerpt into the record?
It says, quote, after you have been exalted in the fourth creation, you could have gone on to exaltation with Holly as a resurrected being. However, you accepted the Savior's invitation to come to this mortal realm one more time in the fifth creation to condescend as a God to help us. You have already assisted us in many ways that can never be repaid, but you will continue to do so as you move forward in this life.
Was there something about this particular portion that stood out to you?
There was.
And what part was that?
The last sentence. You have already assisted us in many ways that can never be repaid.
And then can you talk through what we're seeing on this slide?
So these are internet searches between October 1st and October 16th.
And I think you said October.
Oh, God, I'm sorry, December. I'm looking right at it too. December 1st, 2019, Chad Daybell internet search, Rexford Police Department. December 5th, 2019, internet search, Tammy Daybell obituary. December 11th, 2019, is the day that the body of Tammy Daybell was exhumed. October 12th, 2019, Alex Cox is found dead in his apartment in Chandler, Arizona. And December 16th, 2019, Chad Daybell internet searches authorization to discern a body in Utah, Utah Administrative Code, Utah Administrative Rules, Springfield City Cemetery, Tamara Daybell Autopsy, our law firm, Utah 4th District Court, Utah State Court Directory for the contact information.
And Alex Cox was found dead on December 12th of 2019.
He was.
As part of your investigation, did you also assist in a search on the Daybell property in June of 2020?
I did.
And do you know what the search was for?
Tylee and JJ.
Were there multiple agencies involved?
There were.
Were you in charge of the search?
No.
Did you assist?
I did.
What specific tasks were you given in relation to that?
I was directed to search on the north side of the property under the tree where JJ was found.
And did you in fact assist with that?
I did.
Were you present when his body was recovered?
I was.
I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Blake. All right, Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
The Elmo device.
You may just let us know what you're publishing.
Okay. Judge, we're going to start out with Exhibit 398, the officers. And is it investigator or officer? I'm sorry.
Investigator's fine.
Okay, investigator.
And Your Honor, may we approach just briefly?
Yes. All right, at this time, we are going to take the mid-afternoon recess to work out an exhibit here. We'll come back on the record. We'll try to do that about quarter after. And so we'll be on break till then.
All rise, please. Is present and accounted for.
All right, thank you. Please be seated. We're back on the record on CR 2221-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Daybell. Cross-examination can commence at this time, Mr. Pryor. We do have completed the mid-afternoon recess, and I presume the exhibit's been prepared that you were going to, that you were going to use. So if you'd like to commence with cross, you may.
Thank you, Judge. And if again, could I utilize the Elmo device? And this would be for in relation to Exhibit 398 that the state had prepared in this case.
Yes, you may use the Elmo.
Thank you, Your Honor. And before we start with that, investigator, my understanding is that the information you provided today through your testimony was the result of a number of agencies providing you information. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So the Fremont County Sheriff's Office provided you information, correct?
They did.
Rexburg Police Department provided you information.
Correct.
The FBI.
Yep. Yes.
And other agencies. In putting together this summary, you reviewed all of the information and prepared the summary based on the information that was provided to you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
In addition, were you provided all of the police reports, all of the recordings, all of the data evidence, or was it a process of these agencies providing you what you specifically asked for?
So during the time that our office, the Attorney General's office, was involved in this case, we were being provided those things. Once we no longer on the case, when the case went back to Fremont County, we were no longer provided any other additional information.
So when you say those things, were you provided the actual police reports in regards to this investigation?
I was.
Okay, and you were provided the interviews?
I was.
And all of the emails?
We were provided 3 different hard drives of information.
Okay, and you took the liberty, like I did, going through every single piece of evidence, right?
I'm going to tell you, I did not. I did not look at every single piece of evidence.
Okay. Okay. Did you track the number of phone calls and the frequency of those phone calls between Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell on a daily basis?
No.
What you're testifying to is what you observed on particular days that you chose regarding those phone calls. Is that right?
That's fair.
And you did not look at how frequently or how regularly Chad Daybell or Lori to Alex communicated on a daily basis. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's probably all of it. If you're talking all of the phone calls, no, I didn't look at all of those.
Okay. So you can't say that the frequency of these phone calls is unusual. You can only say that the phone calls or the text messages and the communication took place on those particular days. Would that be fair?
Say that again.
You can't say that the frequency of phone calls on certain days that you highlighted is unusual. All you can say is that on those particular days, the phone calls that took place are documented in your report. Is that fair?
Documented in my report's not fair, but yeah, I would say that I focused in on those because that's where the investigation led me.
Okay. But again, you didn't say, well, on October 1, they had 15 phone calls with each other, but on October 2, on a day of relevance, they had these phone calls. You didn't compare it to non-eventful days with eventful days. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's probably correct.
Okay. Now, I'd like if we could just slowly go through your timeline, and I won't be so slow, but we'll.
Okay.
I won't be so slow, but we are going to hit a few things if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oops. Somebody moved my tape and messed me up. So what we have, if we start on this exhibit, we have Chad and Lori meeting sometime in late November. Is that correct?
October.
I mean, October, excuse me, October. That's correct.
I did the same thing. It's okay.
Thank you. Give me a couple of mulligans today too, would you?
You do the same for me.
I will.
Okay.
We have an agreement, okay? And then we have the date of Charles Vallows being killed by Alex Cox. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And as part of the sharing of information, you are aware that Chad Daybell is not criminally implicated in the murder of Charles Vallow, correct?
I'm not sure on that.
Oh, okay. So the purpose of putting on that was to document, but you haven't been shared any information that Chad Daybell is not criminally implicated in the murder of Charles Vallow, or you were provided a prosecutor's report noting that?
No.
Okay. Then the next one you have is they moved to Rexburg, JJ, Alex, and Tylee, Lori, correct?
Correct.
Tylee goes missing, JJ goes missing. Then we go to the attempted shooting of Brandon Boudreaux. And once again, I noted that you put two items on here, one obviously with the Charles Vallow, but the other one was Brandon Boudreaux. Are you aware that Chad Daybell is not criminally implicated in the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux?
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike counsel's testifying.
Sustain.
Are you aware as to whether or not Chad Daybell is implicated in the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux?
I'm not.
Okay. And then you have Tammy's passing, Chad married. And then as far as Alex Cox is concerned, do you have any information as to the cause of death of Alex Cox?
No, not with me.
Okay. Well, do you have any information as part of your investigation with all of these multiple agencies as to what caused Alex Cox to pass away?
No, I would say that was probably not my scope on this one.
Okay. But you included it on your timeline, right?
I included all three of those on this timeline.
Right. Well, you've just jumped ahead of my question, but thank you. Okay. And just very quickly, you noted that, was that the date, the 26th of 2018, that Chad and Lori first met?
That's what I believe. That's what I was given.
So when you put down the 30th of 2018, Chad doing some searches, do you find it particularly unusual that two people who find themselves enamored with each other would Google search each other?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will get this eventually. So on November 16th and 17th, there's been some previous testimony about Chad traveling to Mesa, Arizona for a Preparing the People conference. You noted that he stayed with Lori in her residence. Are you aware of who the other people that also stayed with Lori at the residence were?
Not off the top of my head, I don't.
But you're aware that Chad was not staying just exclusively with Lori at the residence that day, right?
I don't think I can testify to that.
Okay, so you don't have any knowledge, or as part of your many groups of who provided you information, they didn't happen to mention that Chad didn't stay there exclusively with Lori, right?
I'm not sure.
Okay. On the May 7th to May 5th through 7th, the search for malachite rings. Did you have any emails or text message discussing whether or not both of them admired or had a reason for searching malachite rings?
Not that I remember.
Okay. Or did you take the time and effort to research what the purpose is behind malachite rings?
I do remember reading that. I don't know if I could speak to it today on what
Okay.
that meant.
Would it jar your recollection if there was some reference to the healing powers of malachite? Does that refresh anyway your recollection?
No.
Okay. Now we see an email from Charles to Tammy, and this is June 29th of 2019, right?
Yes.
And at that point, we don't know, particularly through your investigation, when Lori and Chad began seriously this affair, do we?
No, sir.
We can't pin it to a specific day, can we?
I cannot.
But we know at this point something's up, right?
I think that's fair.
Okay. And at this point, it appears that by way of this text message, Charles has discovered something. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Now, do you have any information that shows that any evidence that you've been provided through these numerous agencies that Tammy Daybell blocked Charles's email to her?
That Tammy Daybell blocked. Say that again.
Did Tammy Daybell block Charles from emailing her anymore? Do you have any information to that effect?
I do not. No.
Okay. Did any law enforcement agency or anybody's otherwise through your network of officers helping you provide you information to that effect?
No.
Okay. Now, these emails in general talk partly about the Elena and James story, correct?
Yes.
And at the very top where it says July 14th of 2019, could you read what you wrote at the very top on the right-hand, very top of that split screen?
Where it says Chad writes a romantic sex / sexual story, James and Elena, and sends it to Lori.
Okay.
Chad writes romantic sexual story, James and Elena, and sends it to Lori.
Okay. So the way you perceive this is Chad was writing a romantic sexual, and we can't deny that, right? To Lori, correct?
I think that's fair.
And in no way is this reflecting that because they're having an affair and he's writing her a romantic letter, that it has anything to do with the murder of 2 or 3 people, right?
No, I don't agree with that.
Okay. Where in this letter does it show, let's kill some kids?
Yeah, you're not going to find that in there.
Okay. And you're not going to find that in any emails, are you, sir?
Probably not.
Okay. Thank you. This is a text from Lori to Chad, letting him know that she talked to the insurance company. Do you see that?
I do.
You agree with that?
Do I agree with what?
That she's telling Chad, I talked to the insurance company?
Yes.
Okay. Do you agree that she told him he, meaning Charles, changed it in March?
Yes.
Okay. And then at the last sentence of her text, she says something. Would you read that for me? I'll still.
I'll still get the 4,000 a month in SS.
Okay. And at this point, Tylee's still alive to your knowledge, right?
Yes.
JJ's still alive to your knowledge, right?
Yes.
Tammy's still alive to your knowledge, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Lori Vallow is talking about the fact that with Charles dead, she's getting 4,000. And do you know what the 4,000 is from?
4,000 a month in Social Security is what I'm based on this text.
Would that be for the help support the children?
I'm not sure what that's for.
Okay. July 30th, 2019, Chad sent Lori a text. Something about releasing a little steam. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And then he talks, and would you read going from anyway?
Anyway,
Go ahead through the first 2 or 3 sentences, please.
okay. Anyway, this is a chart that checks what percentage mortals are still in their body. It worked for my friend's wife who died, my neighbor, George Bush, Stan Lee, etc. I kind of forgot about it because I've been dealing with zombies and demonic entities.
Okay. So he's talking about some sort of a chart that other of his neighbors used. Do you see that?
Yes.
Did you ever find that chart?
Specifically to the chart he's talking about, I'm not sure what that chart would look like, or I haven't seen that chart that he's talking to.
Okay. So by term of this, apparently he makes reference to that there being some sort of a chart out there. Do you know if that chart is affiliated with any specific religion?
Again, I don't know what chart you're talking about.
Okay. Well, the one about percentage mortals are still in their body. That's the chart I'm talking about.
I'm not going to speculate. I don't know which one you're talking about, sir.
Okay, that's okay. And then what we have here is from Lori to Zaluma, right? And Zaluma to Chad.
Yes, sir.
Guards of Lori, it appears, and Chad are using Zaluma to sort of give them an alibi to get together, right?
Yes, sir.
And is that something that's particularly unusual if 2 people are having an affair and they find a close patriot to set up a rendezvous that they know maybe shouldn't be going on?
In this case,
I'm not talking about this case. I'm talking about in general.
in this case,
Objection, Your Honor. I think that calls for speculation and is irrelevant.
Sustained on relevance.
Now you talked about the The Grendel gun, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if we were talking in the context of a hunting rifle, it's not unusual to scope something out at 100, then go to 200, and then maybe out to 300, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And someone who's a gun aficionado, it would not be unusual to score your scope so that you know how accurate that gun is, correct?
That is correct.
Did you read or review all of the evidence as it relates to the paintball incident with Tammy Daybell?
I believe so.
Do you know how many times the word paintball was mentioned in all of the documentation related to Tammy Daybell?
No, sir, I don't.
Were you aware of the Google search that Tammy Daybell did on her computer identifying the gun that she thought was being held in the person's hand?
No.
Okay. So the issue with this Grendel is you are suggesting as a possibility that maybe it could have been a gun that someone was using with Tammy Daybell. Is that fair?
Yes.
Instead of a paintball gun?
100% fair.
Okay, well, 100% fair, but you don't know whether it was a paintball gun or a rifle, do you? That day.
I believe it was a Grendel.
Okay, and you believe it was a Grendel, but you weren't there, were you?
No, sir, I was not.
And you didn't go through all of the evidence that you just testified to determine exactly what gun it was. You're going off of what you believe. You're invoking your personal opinion, aren't you?
Objection, Your Honor. This is argumentative and it's asked and answered.
Sustained.
In this exhibit, you talked about that there were some messages between Alex Cox and Chad Daybell. Is that right at this time?
Yes, sir.
And this is on the 9th, correct?
It is.
That's the paintball incident day?
Correct.
Okay. Now, again, you noted that there were text messages, but you, again, didn't put that into context of how many other text messages on a daily basis these folks talked, did you?
Correct.
Okay. And when you look at this chart, what sort of data were you deriving this information from? Was it a Wi-Fi, Google, or what was it?
This was provided to me from the FBI CAST report.
Okay. So when you look at those squares, are you familiar with how CAST reports work?
I'm familiar enough to read that report.
Okay. But you don't know you're not an expert on this information, are you?
That's a fair statement, sir.
And you would rely on the experts to provide this information to you, correct?
I would.
And at that point, you would read it and interpret it the way you see it, correct?
I would read it the way they told me.
Oh, so someone told you that Alex and Chad were near each other on that day?
Their devices were.
Okay. Now I'm looking at the ranges, the purple and the green, and those would represent the towers, correct?
I think the key does say, I actually think those are phone numbers, what you're looking at.
Okay. So when you say near each other, are you aware of how far Alex Cox's apartment is to the BYU library?
I'm not off the top of my head, no, sir.
When you look at that chart, are you able to determine that the range of that encompasses the BYU library?
Off of this?
Yes.
I can't tell, no, sir.
Okay. But you can't also say that when the devices were near each other, you can't even tell me how close they were to each other, can you?
They were sufficiently close. I couldn't probably off the top of my head.
You couldn't, could you?
No, sir.
Yep. You talk about 8 text messages between Alex and Chad Daybell. And again, we'll go back to the fact that you didn't look at the ordinary course of how often they communicated, correct? Frequently on a daily basis.
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Sustained.
Did you check as to whether or not any of these messages were duplicates?
I can't say that I did right away off the top of my head. I'd have to be refreshed. I don't know.
Okay. Do you recall, did you check whether or not as part of the phone records that they were counting some of these phone messages twice?
I can't answer that
Okay. You're not qualified or equipped to do that, correct?
right now. No.
Yeah. I'll eventually get the hang of this someday. I think I may have put the wrong one up.
This is October 9th.
I think I put the wrong one up. Judge, could I just have a moment?
Yes.
I did put the wrong one up, excuse me. We're going to start a different area first, okay?
Okay.
So they, on October 9th, that was the day that Tammy Daybell was allegedly shot with either a paintball gun or, as you seem to think, some sort of a rifle, right?
She was not shot.
Shot at.
Shot at. Correct.
And then October 11th, what's that first sentence say? How to what?
How to drill baffles to make a suppressor.
Okay. So I guess my question is that if Tammy Daybell was shot at on the 9th, why is someone looking how to make a suppressor on a gun if they were shot at by a suppressor 2 days earlier?
You asking that a question for me?
Sure.
If he discarded a suppressor, has a new one, needs to make a new one, there's a number of reasons why you'd look for a new suppressor.
Yeah. Or there's also a reason that you didn't know how to use a suppressor and you were learning for the first time, right?
I think that's evident that he didn't know how to use this weapon from the beginning.
Okay. So he had to learn 2 days after Tammy Daybell's shooting how to use a suppressor, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
Okay. And then 2 days after the alleged shooting of Tammy Daybell by the paintball gun, or as you suggest, a rifle, there's a reference to a Dodge Dakota steel body thickness, right?
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned that the Daybells have a Dodge Dakota.
They did at that time. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you know what year they have?
It is a different year. I believe it's I believe it's a 2004.
Okay. But still talking about the thickness of the steel body of a Dodge Dakota.
Correct.
Okay. And the doors on the Dodge Dakota,
Yes, sir.
the gauge steel are what gauge steel is what they're doing? And then how thick is 22 gauge? Do you see that?
I do.
Okay. And then further below on October 11th, there's the one in between, which is of interest to me, how to build your own silencer, right?
Correct.
And that's 2 days after Tammy was shot, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Oh, my goodness. There we go. Okay, not perfect. So then the second paragraph, Alex's phone does not provide data from 10:45 until 11:53 when it is 7 minutes from the LDS church on Highway 20. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But then up above, it says Alex is near the Daybell residence. And how far is he away?
2.6 miles away.
And he's at that residence from, is that 10:07 to 10:45?
Yes,
So then he leaves is it your testimony that he leaves the LDS church at 10:45? And you don't have any data from 10:45 to 11:53 until, I guess it's at 11:53. He's 7 minutes away from the church on Highway 20. Is that what you're saying?
no.
Go ahead, explain to me.
So what's your question again? Are you 11:53 was when was the last time and when it started providing data again, which was 7 minutes away from the LDS church.
Okay. But from 10:45 to 11:53, we don't know the whereabouts of Alex Cox. Would that be fair?
That is fair.
Or his phone? Excuse me, we should talk about it as his phone, shouldn't we?
I don't think we know where Alex Cox is at that point. I think that was a fair question the first time.
We know where is his phone, right? We don't know
His
where
phone is at the church.
up until what time?
Well, it provides data from until 11:53. Well, 7 minutes prior to that.
Well, and please forgive me, I'm reading that a little different, and that's where I'm having some confusion. The second paragraph, and if you would just read that entire paragraph for me.
So Alex's phone does not provide data from 10:45 p.m. until 11:53, when it is 7 minutes away from the LDS church on Highway 20.
So when reading that, we don't know where Alex Cox's data was from 10:45 to 11:53, correct?
His phone?
His phone.
Correct.
Okay, but we do know from 10:07 to 10:45, his phone was binging at the LDS church, 2.6 miles away, right?
Correct.
Okay, and I'm just trying to clarify that. Thank you.
I think we didn't clarify it, but.
So I look at this chart, and what was of some interest to me is that you mentioned.
Objection, Your Honor. Move to strike that statement.
Sustained.
Let's look at the bottom line, the fourth from the bottom line at 11:46. What does that notation read?
Alex's phone leaves the LDS church parking lot.
And then we'll go back to the original exhibit. Now, you previously put in your report that at 11:46, he left the church parking lot. On this notation, on the second paragraph, it seems to suggest that 11:53, he's 7 minutes away from the church. Which is it?
Well, if you back 11:53 off of 7.
Okay. 11:53 gets you to 11:46, right? 7 minutes off?
Yeah.
But you're saying that there's no data of Alex's whereabouts from 10:45 to 11:53. So how do you know he's at the church if there's no data?
His phone's not providing data. It's sitting. It's not moving.
Well, you don't know that, do you?
I was told that by the cast.
Okay. So in other words, the story from which cast, the FBI?
Correct.
So the FBI told you that the phone is sitting there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if I understand correctly, then that based on what you were told by the FBI, that from 10:45 until 11:53, well, 10:45 to 11:46, Alex Cox was non-mobile and was in the same location for an hour at the LDS church, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. This has been asked and answered.
No.
It's overruled.
Well, you said it was 11:46, right, in your report? The yellow report, do we need to see that one again?
No. Ask your question again.
Why don't you read the first line of the second paragraph up until the word 7 minutes away?
Objection, Your Honor. This has been asked and answered and it's argumentative.
I am going to sustain that, Mr. Pryor. It has been asked and answered.
Okay. So is it your position that Alex Cox's phone was not at the LDS church from 10:45 to 11:53?
His phone was not mobile at the LDS church.
His phone was again, I'm sorry, what?
Sorry, you said something too. Yeah. Say the question again.
Is it your testimony that Alex Cox's phone was not mobile from 10:45 to 11:53 at the LDS church?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
Overruled.
You can answer.
It's not providing data.
Okay. There's a discussion about insurance on this particular slide. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And that could you read under September 8th, the two sentences below or just next to September 8th, 2019, starting with Tammy's?
September 8th, 2019, Tammy's life insurance through Ballard Insurance from the school was raised to $50,000. She raised her individual amount from $10,000 to a max of $80,000 for a total of $130,000.
Okay. And then obviously there was a claim for that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then there was a comment on October 31, 2019 that Chad received and deposited $300,000 life insurance from Primerica, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any knowledge as part of the number of agencies involved in this investigation when Chad and Tammy Daybell opened up that life insurance policy?
It's on this slide, March 19th of 2002.
Okay, I don't see that on the slide. I'm sorry.
It's at the top.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. I missed that. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
You had mentioned earlier about a number of text messages. The prosecutor asked you about the content of a number of text messages. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
What was the range he was talking about in those text messages where there was no content?
Specific. I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Say that again.
There were a number of text messages where the prosecutor asked you about not having any content in some of those text messages, correct?
Okay. Yes, sir.
And do you recall which device and what was the range that you were not provided content of text messages?
There were a number of text messages that we didn't get the content for. Some we got, some we did not.
Okay.
So specifically, I'm not sure which one you're talking about.
Okay. Well, you answered my question. Thank
Okay.
you. But
Good.
the issue is then, isn't it true then that we don't know what those folks were talking about, do we?
No, sir, we don't.
We don't know what the discussion centered around, do we?
I believe I know.
Well, how do you know if there's no content?
My training and experience
Okay.
and this overall case.
Okay. So basically you're speculating, isn't it true, of what the content may be because it aids you in supporting your theory of the case. Isn't that true?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustained.
I have nothing else, Judge. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pryor. All right, Ms. Blake, read back.
Thank you, Your Honor. Investigator Edwards, you were asked about the fact that you focused in on specific days in looking at phone calls. Do you recall that?
I do.
Was there a reason that you focused in on the days you did?
I did.
And why was that?
Because there were significant events that occurred around each of those days.
And Your Honor, may I have the paper exhibit 398? I'm not sure. Mr. Pryor may still have it. It's
Judge,
just,
I can.
this is just the accurate copy.
Very well. Mr. Bailiff, will have you retrieve that and submit that to the state, please?
And if I may have permission to publish from the paper exhibit 398.
You may. And I guess I'd like a little clarification on the record about your comment, Ms. Blake, for purpose of instructing the jurors here what you meant when you said accurate copy.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, the state had provided this particular exhibit in jump drive format. There were a few modifications that had been made to the exhibit. There were other copies that had been printed out that did not contain those accurate changes. This particular printout does have those accurate changes contained within it.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to clarify that nothing that was presented or published in cross was what you deem an inaccurate part of the exhibit. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor, and I appreciate that clarification. This paper copy is an exact replica of the jump drive that was presented in the direct examination.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Blake.
And that's still going to have a little bit of a glare, but was this one of the days that you had determined had significance to your investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
And on here, there's an indication of when the attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell occurred. Do you see that?
I do.
Before and after that, who was having contact by text message?
Alex and Chad. Chad and Alex.
And this is around the time that Chad Daybell's wife had been shot at.
Correct.
Did you determine these particular dates of October 18th and 19th of 2019 to have significance?
Yes.
And on this, do you see an indication of Chad having contact with Lori?
Yes.
Do you see indications of Chad having contact with Alex?
Yes.
And is this around the time or right before Tammy Daybell is pronounced dead?
Yes.
You were asked about a determination that Chad and Lori were engaged in an affair.
Yes.
Is that what the investigation led you to believe?
Yes?
Do you recall when Alex shot Charles?
The July 19th, I believe, 2019.
And could it have been July 11th of 2019?
Yes,
And Charles was married to Lori, is that correct?
correct.
Is it your belief based on the investigation or your understanding that Chad and Lori were already engaged in an affair?
Yes,
And do you recall again the day Tammy was pronounced dead?
I do.
And when was that?
October 19th
Do you recall where her body was discovered?
in the Daybell residence.
Do you recall specifically that it was in her bed?
Bedroom.
What's the connection between Tammy Daybell and Alex Cox?
Chad Daybell.
And do you know where Lori Vallow's children's remains were discovered?
I do.
Judge, objection goes beyond the scope.
Overruled.
Where was that?
Daybell property.
I have no further questions.
All right, thank you. That concludes the testimony then of Investigator Edwards.